Welcome to this exciting meeting. Very excited to have you all join us on this sixth talk in the series, In the Driver's Seat, Aging with Intention. I'm your usual moderator, Christina. It's a bright morning this side of town, and I hope it's warm over there to those in outside countries. So as I see a good number on, we'll just start right away. I'll give a brief introduction, and then we get our facilitator online. So as we age, we get more and more responsibilities. Inevitably, our financial demands also increase. And we do need to know how to manage money better. At Purposeful Aging, we believe that good financial health is important for our seniors to be comfortable, to manage any illnesses, and to avoid mental stress. Those of you who are with us in the first round, we saw the effects of mental stress to our seniors and also to our caregivers who may not be senior yet. Today, we have chosen to discuss this important topic of finances for seniors and aspiring seniors to enable us to be intentional about attaining good financial health. To help us digest this topic, we are privileged to have Mr. Ronald Mukasa. Mr. Ronald Mukasa is a financial literacy coach, a business development professional. Ronald is well grounded in this area. He has provided business management, financial literacy, and financial management training to individuals, to small and medium enterprises for over 10 years. Currently, he's a team leader at Gelka Africa Limited and a director at the Enterprise Uganda. He also previously worked with as an auditor at the famous PricewaterhouseCoopers. Ronald is passionate about leadership and empowering people to attain their full potential. And knowing Ronald, he's very excited to join us today to build our financial literacy. There've been a lot of words about finances, financial management, financial literacy. I trust that by the end of the next 30, 45 minutes, we'll all be very comfortable with what this means and what it means to, particularly to the seniors and to the caregivers who may not be so senior yet. Please welcome me to join Ronald to talk to us today. Ronald, you're most welcome. You have over 30 minutes, after which we'll have questions and answers to you. Thank you so much for joining us, Ronald.
Thank you so much, Christina, for that kind introduction. It's indeed an honor for me to be here today. Thank you so much for the invitation. I'm very excited every time I get an opportunity to talk about money. We are grateful for all the support and all the help that you have offered us, for looking after us. When Dr. Tina invited me for this conversation, and she mentioned that the audience is partly seniors and partly people who I would call my peers. I think I was drawn aback about the big opportunity that I have to just come and discuss this topic with people who are my parents, and I'm very grateful for this opportunity. As I've been introduced, my name is Ronald Mukasa. I'm an accountant by profession, and I've spent the better part of the last 14-15 years supporting small and medium businesses to grow, and specifically on the subject of financial literacy. I've also had the last 10 years working closely with individuals in the corporate world, some who are in business, to help them on the journey of managing money. It's always exciting to notice that it's a conversation which I think we are having more and more. And I think that that's one thing which has shifted, that we are coming out to kind of talk about these challenging topics. Many of us didn't grow up in households where they were discussed all the time. I keep telling my parents that the couple of discussions you had to have with us when we were younger, and we don't think we had them. But I think that's one of the things which has changed, and also platforms like this, which can allow us to talk across borders, are also an amazing addition to the possibilities of how we can be able to grow together. So today we are going to take some time to talk about money from the perspective of how do you view money as a senior, but also for those of us who are not yet seniors, how do we view money? I think, as Dr. Christina mentioned, there are some who may be in retirement. There are others who are looking after their parents who are also on that journey. And as I make this presentation, I am going to try and kind of keep shifting from those two groups, so that we can get everyone in, and possibly we pick a piece which can be helpful. Now, I'm going to request that we use the chat box if there are any comments, any questions, and I will start with the first question. The first question which I'm going to ask is this. I hope everyone can see it. I just wanted us to rank ourselves on a scale of 1 to 10. How would you rate your financial health? Where 10 means that you are very financially healthy, and 1 means, rather 10, you are extremely financially healthy, and 1 means I'm actually struggling. Where would you put yourself? Please take a minute and just go to the chat box and give your response. All right, thank you. I see a number of comments coming through. Great. Yeah. Thank you, Alan. I've seen Alan. Thank you, Philippa. Thank you, Dr. Donna. Thank you so much. Thank you, Kabagambe. Thank you, Annette. Thank you, Patience. Thank you, Catherine. Thank you, Sylvia. Thank you, Martha. Thank you, Doctor. Thank you, Talemwa. Great. Thank you, Henry. Thank you, Esther. Thank you, Anna. Bore, thank you. Now, from the results which we have seen, and I hope all of us have seen them in the chat box, what is clear is that many of us score ourselves between a 3 and a 4 averagely. And a couple of people have crossed beyond 5, but generally what we see in the results is a 3 and a 4. And this is a very interesting observation, because if I ask this same question to your relatives, for example, if I ask them to, if you are still in the workplace, if I ask this same question to your workmates, if I ask this same question to the person who you buy food from in the market, and I ask them that, how would Monica, for example, chances are very high that they will rank you at about a 7 or 8. They would say that that's what success looks like. This person has already actually gotten there. And you will notice that it is actually a contrast. When we look at our personal finances and view them at an individual level, we notice that actually it's a bit of a struggle. Yet when we ask this question to someone else who is seeing us from the outside, we are possibly what success is. And that is the struggle which we have. When you tell a family member who brings you a letter requesting for a wedding contribution, when you tell them that you are going to only afford to give them 100,000 or 50,000, they'll say, but how can you only give 100,000? That's you, a miser. You seem to be much more successful than this. And that mismatch is the contrast which we are always battling with. Some of us who are still in the workplace, you'll notice that your workmates actually look at you as someone who has already delivered on, ticked all the boxes. And if they ask you at an individual, you're saying that I don't think I'm ready. But when they look at you from a distance, they are saying you are actually there. So these results are very interesting because the people outside look at us very differently from the way we view ourselves. Now, I'll just move on to our next slide. The thing is that this question is also asked in a specific context. I believe this is not just in Uganda, but all over the world. Financial times are generally tough. Even today, some people have argued that the world is edging towards a recession, and we feel the pain. Those of us who are here have seen the price of fuel go from 3,800 shillings to now 6,500 shillings. And this has happened in a very short space of time. And you feel like the pinch is even basic things like posho, basic things like food. And this is just food. They are actually becoming a struggle for households to be able to meet. And this, when we ask this question, we need to appreciate that actually there is a reality. The financial times are also equally challenging. And many times you are evaluating yourselves in these financial times. And these financial times don't select. They don't only select. They say that if someone is in retirement, the financial times will be different on you. The financial times are the same on you when you're in retirement, are the same on you when you're not in retirement. And that means that we all have a lot of financial management to look at because of those challenging times. That article which came out a while back, I think this was sometime at the beginning of the year, and it said 1,000 civil servants applied to reduce age. And why the civil servants were applying to reduce age, they were saying, I am not ready for retirement. So they told them, but you are 60, you need to go. And they said, no, I am not 60. Who told you I am 60? And they applied and said, no, I'm not 60, I'm actually 52. And people were, this article which came out in the leading daily. And the reason is that when it comes to the subject of retirement, it's actually a very scary subject. And we're going to talk about this in a moment. But it's a scary subject because many times, even during our work lives, we haven't been preparing for this period. And we haven't prepared adequately. And we need to appreciate that, especially those of you who are not yet there, that the way you have to think about retirement is the same way you think about school fees of your child. The urgency of school fees should be the same urgency that you have for your retirement planning, because it presupposes that you are going to be able to put aside a small amount of money over a period of time, so that when that time comes, you are ready. Those people who are civil servants know that when you look at the pension which you are given as a civil servant, it totally is not sufficient. It's a small pension. And when you're a civil servant, possibly you had a public vehicle which you would drive, but in retirement, the pension doesn't come with a public vehicle. And that becomes a very big challenge. So you need to appreciate that the reality is such that as we walk towards retirement, it is a scary period. However, in spite of that, the truth is that many of us actually celebrate you. We look at you as the definition of success. And when I asked you the question earlier, I told you earlier that there is a mismatch between what you see and what the rest of us see. When the rest of us look at you, we actually believe that you are the definition of success. Some of you have joined the caller out of the country. For those of us who are in the country, when we send you a WhatsApp message and we say we are having a wedding, from you we expect dollars and big dollars. Say, don't worry, at least half of decoration will be covered by Auntie. Don't worry. We think when Auntie sends through her contribution, we will be able to cover all the transport. The point is that in spite of how you view yourself financially, those of us who are watching you, and this is a very typical case of the people who have who work in the diaspora. The expectations of us who are here in the country are extreme. We give you specific sections in the budget because you are even earning in a different currency. And yet, you also know that at the same time, you're struggling with credit card debt. At the same time, you're struggling with possibly fully paying up a mortgage. And those burdens are there. Now, that is what we need to be kind of dealing with. In spite of our celebration, you need to ask yourself, what is the reality of my finances? So that you don't sit in a place where you actually think that our celebrations are justifications of your financial health. For us, we'll celebrate you, but you need to ask yourself, what is my financial reality? And I kind of put this here to just highlight that in our financial journey, most of us will start off possibly with, it's usually a modest start with little or no income. After you finish school, you possibly find a job. After finding a job, you build a house. As many times people call this thing a dream house. You buy a car, you start a family, the joys of family, you borrow a bit, and then you retire. Now, for the first 5 sections, you notice all of them happened before retirement. But one thing which you need to appreciate about retirement is that it usually takes a bit longer than we thought. My mother retired when I was finishing school, about 2004, 2005. And when she retired, she had these long speeches she used to give us. You people, I have worked, I have served my country, I've done very well. Now I'm retiring. She's still alive and well. And that is 17 years later. So retirement can take actually a bit of a while. And we need to understand that section, we need to think about it deeply. And that's where my conversation is going to be today. And there are 3 big questions which I'm going to ask. Some of these questions are for those of us who haven't yet retired. Some of these questions are for those of us who have retired. So first question is, shall I make it? That is, if you haven't retired yet. But the second one is, I have made it. What do I do now? The second question is, what shall I do and what should I do, assuming I'm already in retirement? And shall I afford it? And the other question for those of us who are in it, am I affording it? That's the question which I want us to pay attention to. So for the first question, which is, shall I make it? This question here, what I want us to reflect on is, what do the numbers say? The first number which I want you to pay attention to is this number called life expectancy. The life expectancy in Uganda currently is about 63, 62. 63 for men, for women, 62 for men. There's a slight difference between men and women. Now, this is actually relatively low. Those of you who live in other economies, this number in some economies is 72, it's 73 years. Now, that means that if currently you are 50 years old, chances are you still have 13 years to retire, rather to what we call life expectancy. But what I want us to pay attention to is those of us on this call are not what you will call an average Uganda. Now, this is an average. This average is gotten by the person who is living in the village in Chiboga, averaged with the person who has had health insurance all their lives. Now, what this means is that it is highly likely that this 63 we see here, you may push another 15 years beyond 63. And if you push another 15 years beyond 63, that's 78. You could push another 25 years beyond 63. And it's important when we start this conversation to appreciate that actually, when you think about it, retirement is a very long period of time. It's almost the period of time you spent in school. Could have finished school at 23, and you could spend that same amount of time in retirement. And it's important that as you reflect on it, you reflect on it in that perspective. It is not an end. It is just a new season. And this new season, you need to think about it from the perspective of money, think about it from the perspective of your own life. So there are a couple of arguments I'm going to make, which are important. And some people may come and talk about these a bit more deeply as you go through the series. But the first one is to be healthy. I think one of the best financial decisions you can make is to make sure that you are healthy. Because that one of the biggest expenses in retirement is actually health. The health cost is one of the biggest. We saw this during COVID. Families were wiped out to just treat their loved ones. And the reason is because healthcare is expensive. And one of the ways you can mitigate this expense is by making sure you are, and possibly Dr. Christina, you should invite someone to just talk about physical health and how you can be healthy. But the point I want to make here is that it's a good financial decision. So you have to be healthy. You have to make sure that you're physically fit and you do this. It could be a walk, it could be, but you need to do it because it actually boils down to how you are managing money. And I'm looking at it from the perspective of managing finances. The second thing is regular checkup. It's something which I'll add there, and a couple of people can come who can be able to talk authoritatively on this section. But the point here is that health is a big one and you need to make sure it's well managed. The other one is strengthen relationships. You will notice that it is critical. If you think about the things, and I'm glad that the session which you had previously was stress, and I think it's what you talked about. It is very, very important that the relationships that you have that are important to you, and these are your close family members. These are your friends. Make sure that they are solid relationships, and I'm going to talk about this in a moment. But if you need to notice that in this time, those are the anchors that are holding you together, and having strong relationships is critical. And sometimes you need to get your way. Make sure that you make a step. I had a story of a Chinese gentleman who had a disagreement with his son, and that disagreement made them not to talk. I think some of you may have read this story. And the big challenge was that in the Chinese culture, the apology comes from the child, not from the parent. So this gentleman had not talked to the son for a long time. That he was living in America, the son was living in the US, but he hadn't talked to the son because the culture says that it is you who has to make the first step. And for him, making the first step to call his son and say, you know what, I made this sorry. The son also said, by the way, I'm also equally sorry. But the point is that this may be the moment. And that brings me to the point of just finding peace and forgiveness. It is critical that during this season, especially the season of retirement, you find peace, you find forgiveness. And it's good because you will notice that in as much as that may look like it's outside money, the way the cost which stress can bring to you is actually an expensive one. And the fact that you find peace, you actually notice that it is something which helps you possibly not to spend as much as you would have wanted, because you are living peacefully, and possibly some ailments will be able to be dealt with. I've just seen a question from Talemo. How do you define health? Is it just the absence of diseases? I think there are people who are more authoritative on this subject, on the subject of health, and I'll request Dr. Christina to also put a voice in on this when we come to our Q&A. But I think for me, in my opinion, it is that being able to live fully your life and it isn't your health holding you back, that you can go to the places you want to go, you can be able to enjoy life fully. And that could be the absence of disease, but it could also be the presence of strength to be able to at least be able to walk in your 70s and your 80s, and you can be able to walk a distance of a kilometer or two. And that is something, so that you can walk to a friend and just say hello. Those are big privileges. And I think on this one, I'll ask Dr. Christina to make a comment. The second question, which I wanted to look at, is what shall or should I do? Now, if you have answered the question, or the first question, that what shall I do? That is for those of us who are not retired. But what should I do if you are retired? There are a number of things that people do in their retirement. Some people spend it with their grandchildren. Some people say, I am going to be on my farm and be able to do a bit of agriculture. Some people say, I will spend time in my community and make a contribution. Some people even go out and study and say, I'm going to study something which I've always wanted to study. I'm going to study it at this point. Now, all those are possibilities, but you need to ask yourself, what is yours? And it's important that you answer this question, especially for those people who haven't gotten there. Answer it before you get there. So that you're saying that this is actually what I'll do. But even the people who are there, I made the point earlier that it takes a pretty long period of time. It's not a short process. And this not being a short process means that you have to be ready. So things like giving back to the community, engaging with the community. In some places, people can volunteer, they can be able to do that. That's good. That's something which you can do well. Just becoming part of the community. Some people go to their churches, some people get involved in their cultural institutions, some people find solace in places like Rotary and Lions and wherever. But the point is that you have to have a community you are part of. But I wanted to make this point and make this from the perspective of money, but also from the perspective of what you do. It could also be that you should keep working. And I think one of the things is that the fact that your workplace has retired you doesn't mean that you should stop working. I mean, we just lost the Queen and she was 96 and she was still on her job. There are a couple of people who have lived way into their old age and they're working. And it helps if it doesn't have to be for money, that you're not working for money. But you could go to a nearby school and you say, you know what, I want to volunteer for 3 days and I will come and teach the children math. And it just stress that process and say that there's something which I am doing. I think it is important. But for some of us, we may actually have to keep working to even earn a bit of money to come in. And there's nothing wrong. If the strength is still there and you can find the work to do, I think you should consider it. Now, let me go to the gist of our conversation, which is, shall I afford it? And that's where I'm going to put quite a bit of health. That's where I'm going to put quite a bit of emphasis. So the first thing about personal finance is that personal finance is 80% behavior and only 20% head knowledge. This is borrowed from a guy called Dave Ramsey. Now, why is it important to notice that it's personal finance? It's personal finance means that actually what you are dealing with is a very personal thing. It is not at all how your neighbor will work with money, sometimes even how your family will deal with money. And you need to understand that your preparation, there are people who are very good accountants at their workplace, but very poor at managing their own money. But the point is that it is about behavior. And what we are going to talk about most here is how do we behave with money. Now, what should the goal be? The goal should be financial independence. What is financial independence? Financial independence is the status of having enough income to pay one's living expenses for the rest of one's life without having to be employed or dependent on others. Now, what does this mean? It means that if currently, to be able to live the quality of life I am living, I need 2 million shillings per month. How do I get that money passively? I was giving this submission to a certain financial institution, and there was a gentleman who was a driver. I said, you know what, I listened to what you said about financial independence. I said, I think I'm closing in on it. He said, you explain it to me. He told me that he has built 5 Mizigo, And the 5 Mizigo he has built, one of them is bigger than the others. He lives in it with his family. And the other 4, he rents them out at 150,000 per Mizigo, which is 600,000 shillings. Then I said, okay, now explain, why do you think you're financially independent? He said, because I get 600,000 shillings from those Mizigo, but my salary at work is also 600,000 shillings, which is actually sufficient for me. That salary is actually enough for me. I look after my family in the 600,000 shillings, and yet I can be able to get it even though I don't have a job. Now, for those of us who are not yet retired, that's the goal. You need to say, to run this household comfortably, I need 5 million shillings. How do I convert that? That driver I've talked about in that bank, for his CEO to be able to pull off that feat, the CEO may have to have, if the CEO takes home 30 million shillings, the CEO has to have 30 apartments, each of them giving 1 million shillings for him to reach what the driver has been able to achieve. So you need to ask yourself, am I walking towards financial independence? And I'm going to make the points, I'm going to make a couple of arguments of how to look at this. Now I want to start with 5 retirement traps. What can trap us? What five retirement traps exist? I would like to start with this question, especially for those of us who are still in employment. At the end of a month, what percentage of your salary is left after expenses? Can I just quickly put that in the chat box? I see, yes, Philippa has shared with us the definition of health. Thank you, Philippa. It's right there in the chat box. Thank you, Alan. Thank you, Philippa. Thank you, Catherine. I'll assume the rest of us are not earning a salary. That means we can't answer this question. Thank you, Anna. Okay. Thank you, Talemwa. Thank you, Sylvia. Now, from the responses which we have an average of about 20–30%. Now, one of the first key things about achieving financial independence is fighting the first trap which we call paycheck to paycheck. If you live or have lived on paycheck to paycheck, that usually creates a problem in retirement because the paycheck stops coming. But even for those of us who are not yet retired, if you are living paycheck to paycheck, you are running one of the most dangerous experiments, because the day that paycheck stops, you have to lean on others to survive. And you need to understand that this process of living paycheck to paycheck has very little to do with how much you are paid. There are people who live on paycheck to paycheck who earn 1 million. People who live on paycheck to paycheck who earn 5 million. People who live on paycheck to paycheck who earn 10 million. The point is that it's the culture of saying that a part of everything I earn is mine to keep that creates a difference. I think I like what I think it was, let me just see. Yes, I think it was Talema who said, I intentionally save 40% before expenses. The moment that process is there, that a part of what I keep is mine to keep and I will save it, your preparation for retirement is on the right track. Because that means that you are going to invest. I'll talk about investments in a moment, but the point is that that exists. Now, if the number is negative, it's a dangerous place, because that means that you are eating a part of the future today. It means that I got the paycheck of the last month, which was August. The month hasn't ended. Today is the 23rd, is it? Yes, it's the 24th. The month hasn't ended, but I don't have enough money to buy fuel for the last 6 days. So I go to my human resource manager and I ask for a bit of October. Say, give me the first week of October so that I eat it in September, but that week of October reaches. And then when October reaches, you have already eaten part of it. Say, give me November and I eat it also. And then very soon you're asking for years. So give me the whole of 2020 and I deal with it now. If you are living paycheck to paycheck, it's a very dangerous place to be. And that's one of the first things which we need to ask ourselves, how can we be able to change? There is this law called Parkinson's law. And what Parkinson's law says is that your expenditure raises to meet your income. It means that every time they increase your income, you find expenses to cover it up. And if that's the process of living paycheck to paycheck, because every time, it's not that the income hasn't increased, but every time it has increased, you have had to release it. Then the second one is what we call the cash flow squeeze. What is the cash flow squeeze? And this is key for the people who are in retirement. People who are asset rich, but cash poor. It means that you have assets, but the assets are not producing cash. And when you are in your retirement, you actually need cash. So if you are in such a scenario, you need to ask yourself, when you are younger in your work life, it is okay to get more assets because your cash flow can come from your salary. But as you get towards retirement, these assets need to be converted into cash generating assets. And I'm going to talk about a couple of options, yeah, as I bring the conversation to a close. But what is critical is that if you find that you are asset rich but cash poor, you are running a very, very dangerous scheme, because you find that a demand for cash may force you to liquidate your asset at a wrong price because you have been pushed against the wall. So it's important to ensure that you, for your retirement planning, you say, how can I get some of these assets and convert them into something that can generate cash? I'll give an example. You could have a home you live in, but you also have a very big chunk of land. Now, that chunk of land, if the cash flow is good, you don't need to be forced into liquidation. But if it is such that you are always being pushed against the wall, some of you have lived in places where someone has sold their chibanja and they have sold piece by piece until the chibanja has disappeared. That person was asset rich but cash poor. For the planning, it's helpful to say that, you know what, possibly if I have land where I can get 500 million, let me liquidate the land where I can get 500 million. Let me buy a treasury bill, for example. And then it gives me a very specific cash flow similar to a salary for a long period of time, other than selling off pieces and not optimizing my asset. So that's one of the challenges. But also the challenge 3 is what we call the illusion of assets. Sometimes we have things which we think are assets, but they may not be. And I want you to answer this simple question. I have 3 things here: a house in the village on top of the hill in the village, a lovely vehicle, and education for your children. Which of these is an asset? We can just put that in the chat box. There are 3 items: house in the village, lovely luxury vehicle, education for your children. Which is an asset? Thank you, Alan. The house and education. Thank you, Philippa. Patrick, thank you. Henry, thank you. Dr. Christina, thank you. Anna, thank you. Philippa says a car can be an asset or a liability. Yeah. Talemwa, thank you. Esther, thank you. Eva, thank you. Great. The majority of us are saying the education for my children is my asset, is an asset. A couple are saying that even the land in the village can be an asset. Now there are people whose villages have become cities, and for sure, I would argue that possibly that's true. Some people, their villages are in Munyonyo, their villages are in the center of Soroti town, their villages are in the center of Arua, and that could be, you could make a case that possibly those are assets. However, I've had a couple of people argue about a vehicle. I think I've had a couple of groups of people. I think I had a lawyer friend who told me, no, a vehicle is indeed an asset. So I said, explain to me why. He said, when I'm going to a client and I want to give him a big fee note, when he sees me driving a Range Rover like that one, they feel like I'm not overcharging them when I ask for 30 million shillings. But if I go in a funny car, they may say, this man, I can pay him 2 million shillings. So he said, no, the car can convert. But that's not the same for most of us. For most of us, it's just for driving. The land in the village, you need to ask yourself, how is this land responding to me? Is it you paying to maintain that land, or it is the land paying you? Some of us have big houses in the village, but you are actually paying someone who lives in that house. So in that regard, it is not behaving like an asset. It is behaving by and large like a liability, because it is you who has to pay. It is you who has to pay for those people who are sleeping in your house. And then you have to ask yourself, assuming I go to my workmate and I tell him, you know what, I have some 50 acres of land and they are right in Serere, about 20 kilometers or 30 kilometers from the road. I want you to liquidate. Chances are that you are the only person who can buy from you that land is actually your own brother. And when you ask your brother says, but I also have my land next to yours. Oh, I can't even afford. So you need to ask, how is that asset responding? But it has a lot of fulfillment. Having a lovely house in the village, it's very fulfilling, and I understand that. Culturally, it is one of the things where people say this man has actually become a man. Now he has a house. If you have no house, however big your house is, wherever you live, people will say this fellow is a joker. He has no house in the village. And those questions are there, but they are separate. But as you invest, you need to ask yourself, let me not confuse the two. Let me not say that what I have, because that's what I mean by the illusion of assets. You say, I have my 500 million in the village. It may not be 500 million after all, because if you wanted it, you can't be able to get it. On the question, on the question of education, you need to ask yourself, whose asset is it? Is it my asset as the parent, or is it an asset of the child who went to school, who got that certificate? Or is it for both of us? So when we think about education, many of us mentioned that education is an asset, but it's an asset for who? Who capitalizes on that asset? You can just go to the chat box and make that argument. Talemwa raises a good point. Children are equipped so that they don't depend on us for retirement. So at least some people may argue that I take my children to school so that I avoid the cost in the future, because uneducated children are even more expensive. Fair point, and I agree with you. However, the question is, whose asset is it? Talemwa still says you can convert the house into a hotel, and that's a powerful one. If you can convert it into a hotel, then possibly now it has converted into an asset, and you can be able to get money out of it, and that's a good thing. And if it's possible where your house is, then that's something you should consider, because you have converted it from behaving like a liability to behaving like an asset. Patient says, but such a luxury car can also bring you money over the weekend. Yeah, I I mean, if you can take it out, people can borrow it for the weekends, well and good. And that I totally respect. But you need to ask yourself, is that what you are doing with the car which you are driving? Talemwa says it's an asset for both. Philippa says it's an asset for both. Alan says both, but more to the children. Martha says for both. Esther says for the children. I wanted to hear from the rest of us whose asset is education. Education is an asset for the children. That's for Patrick. Rachel is saying it's an asset for both. Great. I'll give people 1 more minute. Those of us who haven't commented, whose asset is education? All right. I see Annette says it is for the children. Dr. Christina says peace of mind for seniors and big asset for the children. So if your children are educated, you have peace of mind in your retirement. And I totally agree. There is a peace which comes saying, I gave you education, I gave you everything you needed, go out there and make it on your own. But it's an asset for the children. Anna says it's for both. Pauline says it's an asset for the children. Kabagambe says it's an asset for the children. Fiona says it's for both. Children, if they use it, yes. Children, Process says it's for the children if they use it. Kathy says it's for the parents. Esther says education is an asset for both. For the children, if they are educated and financially independent, they can cease to be a liability to their children. Fair enough. To the parents, if the children are supported, if it can help to support the parents from their earnings and their education. Now, one of the things which I wanted us to, and from the responses, what we saw clearly is that people are saying it is an asset for both. Now, it is very critical to answer that question at an individual level, because many times the way education is perceived, it is equated to one of the top investments which I make as a parent. And I need to make sure that I don't get into the illusion that this education I've given my child is my retirement plan. Many of us are blessed with children who have feel an obligation to actually look after us. I personally believe that one of the greatest uses of the money which I make is being able to look after my parents. It gives me great joy. That's my personal conviction. However, if it doesn't give great joy to your son or your daughter, they have no obligation at all. There is no contract you have with them to look after you. If they had to choose between their son and you to take to the hospital, chances are very high they will take their son. So when you think about education, it is an asset to you in the sense that at least it takes away a problem from you, a liability from you. A child who depends on you forever. However, you shouldn't get into the temptation of believing that this thing called education is also, you shouldn't equate it to a rental property. That I have 4 children and each of them will bring 500. That shouldn't be the way you look at it. And it's important that we do. Now, I believe that there is also a generational thing in this. If you think about our parents' view of family was very, very expanded. So they viewed family as their children. They viewed family as the children of their brother, the children of their sister. Many of us grew up in households where you could easily lose a bed when an uncle arrived, and your room could be replaced, and that was okay. The view of when your parent was looking for money, they looked for money for your school fees, then for your cousin's school fees, and they were looking for that money the same way. But I hope you have observed that something is changing. Many people actually don't view it that way anymore. Their family is just their children. And that is closing in and closing in. So we need to ask ourselves that we shouldn't have an assumption that something is an asset and something an asset, yet it actually isn't. It's a very solid asset to your children. They hold the certificate, and indeed, if they use it, it can bring them great income. But for you as the person who is paying, you shouldn't stretch the possibility of education as a retirement plan. You need to ask yourself, if I am blessed enough and my children come back to look after me, well and good. But I have to have a plan for myself. Then the other thing is what we call playing God. What do we mean by playing God? It is you trying to be God in your family. And one of the things which this is written in a book called The Millionaire Next Door. It's written by two guys, a guy called Stanley and Danko. And it's a research which was done in the US on who are these ordinary millionaires. And they said one of the things which is absent in the households of ordinary millionaires is this thing called economic outpatient care. What is economic outpatient care? Economic outpatient care is looking after your adult children way into their adulthood. And you find that actually you would have been okay in your retirement, but your greatest stress is your adult children. And you are giving them forgiveness loans. Your son comes and says he has got a job, and the job is taking him somewhere in Pade. Tell him, but Pade is very far. I think it's okay. Then he keeps here. He marries a wife. His job is uncertain, but you don't question that. You say, let's get the wife. Then you keep buying supplies for the family. And you keep doing what we call giving economic outpatient care. This is a dangerous thing. It is something which can suck life out of your retirement. So you need to ask yourself, have I slipped into? And it's a very dangerous thing, especially when it's possible for you economically. But sometimes it's possible for you economically, but it's compromising your future but worse still, it also creates a problem for the child, because on your departure, this child is not independent. They can't stand on their own. And sometimes it's okay for that child to walk through that difficult season for themselves so that they find their feet, and you are doing them a big favor. So EOC is another big one. There is this thing called black tax. I'll talk about it briefly. We have had it. It's a concept which is usually used that everyone who succeeds basically in an African family finds that they have a tax which they have to pay for those who have been less successful. So they will send you, your cousins will send you their children to look after, and we have done it. And I personally think that fundamentally, it's such a blessing to be able to help out your family. And I think if it is within your budget, there is no problem. But if it reaches a point where it is actually also compromising your financial health, then you are cutting the tree on the branch on which you are seated. Then there is what we call quick money. That's another trap. Every time you hear something called sure deal, abnormal profit, we have had people who have gotten their NSSF, and when they got their NSSF, the first thing they did with their NSSF is to go and make a deal. I heard of a gentleman who was convinced to get into trucks and a wheel loader. And this was a time when South Sudan was booming. And he bought a wheel loader. Some of you know what a wheel loader is. A wheel loader is that long thing which carries a caterpillar. So if you want to take a caterpillar or to excavate somewhere, there's that thing on which they carry it. It's called a wheel loader. So he bought a wheel loader, told him the daily rate. They told him you can hire it 1.5 million. He got a deal. Someone took it to South Sudan. They were going to take it for 3 weeks. He paid some of the money. He computed. He said, I'm going to be rich. And numbers were exciting. After 3 weeks, he's not hearing from there. After another 2 weeks, he's not hearing from there. They call him and say the wheel loader has been captured by rebels. And but if you want, you can come and pick it. Now, he had invested all his money. in this good idea of the will load. And the truth is that, do you go to South Sudan and attempt to pick it? You can't. You say, at least I have life. But you have also kind of lost your retirement package. So you have to be very careful. And many times those people, as we approach retirement, there's always someone giving you a good idea. Sometimes they're our own family members. They tell you, you know what, just invest this money in this. You'll get this much every week. You get this much every day. And you need to ask yourself, am I actually, it's called a low bed. That is what I call it, a will loader. It's called a low bed. Yes. Maggie, thank you for the clarification. Yeah, but the point is that you need to ask yourself, this place I am investing my retirement package, is it safe enough to take me through? So you need to ask, we all have a gambler inside us, and the gambler inside us has the capacity to be activated every time we hear abnormal profits, every time you hear sure deal. Some of you might have seen this article not so far back. 1,500 Ugandans lose shillings 10 billion to an online scam, and they lost this money within a period of 3 months. They lost 10 billion shillings. Some of you heard about these things called forex trading. You heard about telex free. You heard about most recently it's been cryptocurrency. But the point is that every time you are being told that there's a simple way to make money, which is quick, be careful, because the gambler in you is being activated, and it can help. It can cause you to blow your entire package. Now, the final one is the allure of debt. And when I talk about the debt trap, really what we are saying is that one of the most dangerous things is to be in an environment where you are actually constantly borrowing. You borrow from family, you borrow from workmates, you borrow from the bank, borrow from the microfinance, you borrow from the money lender. This process of constant borrowing is one of the most dangerous habits to walk into retirement with. And you need to draw back and say, I need to put a stop to it. And sometimes it feels like it's impossible. But you need to ask yourself, how do I stop? Most times people think that the first debt you get is from the bank. No, the first debt you get is from family and friends. Some of us have borrowed from our parents and we haven't repaid them. And yet we say, lend us some money. Actually, most times you're borrowing from family, from friends, from workmates. There is no interest. They are relational. They are based on trust. They don't even ask you to sign. But also those are the most abused loans. They are the loans which are taken least seriously. And then you end up with the bank in retirement. The bank starts saying, you know what, now you are no longer our client. Go to the savings groups, microfinances. Then we usually end up with this fellow called the money lender. If you find that you are locked in a relationship with the money lender, it's important to actually say that I need to walk back on this, because that relationship is a very dangerous relationship. It's charging 10% per month, which is 120% per year. It's an impossible one. There are people who can use money lenders, and that kind of financing is helpful for some groups of people. I've seen people who are in business, some of my clients, and he says, I need to clear items. I respect that. But if you are going to the money lender to simply go through the month, then you need to be able to walk back. Allow me to close with proposing a couple of ways forward. And these proposals are going to be for those of us who are already retired and those of us who are yet to be retired. My first proposal is this. The first proposal is gratitude. The picture you are seeing there is a picture of my grandmother. She was called Jaja Juliana Dungu. She passed away in 2020. She passed away when she was over 90 years old. And I think I haven't seen someone who has enjoyed her retirement the way she has enjoyed it. She lost her husband in 1966. She had 12 children. But the thing that I saw which kept her in all her old age, and I saw her for a long time. I grew up with her and she was close, was the fact that she was constantly a person of gratitude. She was always grateful. And I think before you worry about money, where it's going to come from, you need to make sure that you are at least grateful for what you have, grateful for the children you have, grateful for the house which you may have, which you are living in, grateful for the garden which can give you a bit of food, grateful for the job which you have if you still have it. This gratitude is such a powerful tool because it kind of takes away the great stress that comes from the worry of the uncertainty that is out there. So you have to have an attitude of gratitude. This lady, by the time she died, she was active in her church. She attended functions even 3 years before her passing, and by then she was about 92, 93 years old. But the point is that she was always grateful. She didn't have much, but she was grateful. And I think for me, that peace which comes with gratitude, you might be in your retirement and you are not as happy as you would have hoped to be. You're saying, I should have done a couple of these things earlier. But you will also quickly notice that there is what you have. If your son or your daughter sends you 50,000 shillings, 100,000 shillings, be grateful to it and make sure that they know. Say thank you to them. Say, you know what, I'm grateful that you have said this. And make sure that you have that attitude of gratitude. When you sit down to a meal and the meal you are taking has your favorite food, it has matoke, it has meat, it has chicken, it has beans, whatever it has, say thank you for it and make sure that you're grateful. So it is important to adopt, but it's very difficult to adopt an attitude of gratitude if you haven't practiced what I talked about earlier of forgiveness. You need to make sure that you release some of these things. Every family has issues. Some of us have disagreed with our children. We have disagreed with our spouses. But when we release those things, it allows us to see the good things, because there is someone out there who says that if I had your life, I would be where I want to be. But even you who has your life, you are not enjoying it. So have an attitude of gratitude. If you have grandchildren who you are looking after, enjoy them. Make sure that because they exist. Now, things don't go out perfectly, but the truth is, you can look at it as half empty or half full. But you need to have to say that at least there's something, even just life. Getting into your 60s, getting into your 70s, when you can still walk, it's a powerful thing. When you are in good health, that attitude of gratitude is critical. Second proposal which I'm going to make is what I call a liquidity number. The liquidity number, and I'm going to say this to specifically people who haven't retired yet. Your current salary is, let's say, 4 million shillings. And that 4 million shillings is sufficient to look after your family. You could start with that as your liquidity number and start saying, I need to invest in such a way that something can give me 4 million shillings. If you choose real estate, which is, if that's your choice, say that I've invested in real estate, it's going to give me, the real estate I've invested in is going to give me 4 million shillings. That's a path which you start in your 40s, a path which you start in your 30s. So that by the time you're 55, you're 60, actually you have reached that thing called the liquidity number. It can't work by chance. You need to be deliberate about it. So you need to ask yourself, I talked about financial independence earlier, but you need to ask yourself, how do I get to that point? That question of the liquidity number. Towards retirement, prepare your family for retirement. Make sure that your family knows that you are about to retire. It's important that you do it. And even some people are retired, but you're still treating your family like you are not retired. You need to tell your family, you know what? I used to have a job. It was a very well-paying job. Now I don't have it. So there's only so much I can do. It's okay. Some people don't know that you're about to retire. Some people don't know that you're retired, but prepare them and make sure they are informed. The other thing which is critical is this thing called the will. Sorry. The will is very, very important. One of the reasons why the will is critical is because at this point, you need to make sure that your estate is in order. Don't leave your family in disarray because of uncertainty. Some of us have raised a sufficient amount of assets. And the moment we disappear, even family members who used to be friends stop being friends. Some of us are in family structure where you have two mothers, you have two fathers, and you are siblings, but you're from different mothers. And we have seen families which have been dissipated because of the conflict that has been created by this environment. So what is the key thing here? Get your house in order. Find a lawyer. There is a nice recording from Enterprise Uganda. As I mentioned, I work with Enterprise Uganda also. There's someone we hosted called Francis Gimera. He's a lawyer with Judith Aboto. And I've put the link there. I will also put it in the chat box. But the point is that he spoke about the necessity to have good succession planning. And the will is one of the most basic ones, so that it is in order. And when you are writing your will, you are saying, how do I make sure that even the asset or the estate we have collected can be able to be sustained? And you find that sometimes the person who has to lead is different. Sometimes you may look at your son and you say, I think my son won't be a good leader of this family. The person I want to leave the business to is my daughter. Write that and write that clearly. The rest of us will not understand, but you are their parent. You understand it fully. So make sure that that is in order. Get your house in order and ensure that it is clear. Most of you have a lawyer friend. Please make sure that this is done. It's such a bad thing when a family, when someone leaves the earth and what used to be a successful estate is dissipated by the death of that person. And usually the starting point is the fact that the will wasn't in order, but also the preparation for that process wasn't done well. Then if you are in debt, get out of debt, especially for the people who are not yet. Usually you find that in retirement, you don't want to have a relationship with debt, but you have to start a journey of getting out of debt. One of the people I recommend you listen to on this subject is a guy called Dave Ramsey. He speaks a lot, especially on how to get out of debt. But one of the things which he says is that if you find yourself in debt, list down all your loans and debts. Arrange them from the smallest to the biggest. Then inform the people you have borrowed from your capability to pay. I think those are debtors, not creditors. Your capability to pay, to repay. Then you pay the minimum on all the ones with the exception of the smallest. So you may find that your smallest debt is 50,000 shillings. And in your list, 10 debts. The biggest one is 10 million. The smallest one is 50,000. Pay the minimum on all the others and then clear the smallest one. And then you do that until all of them are repaid. One of the things which is critical is to notice that if you find yourself in debt, especially as you approach retirement, at some point, you may be forced to actually liquidate assets to be able to do it. But I can tell you that being debt-free releases you. It releases you and it gives you a new kind of energy, a new kind of peace. So you need to ask yourself, how do I start this journey? I would be glad to have a conversation with anyone who wants to make sense of specifically the managing of debt. Then a plan for emergencies. I think there are two things I want to look at. One of the things is life insurance. It would be nice possibly to host an insurer one of the days in the series to just talk through this. But life insurance is important. You need to ask yourself, have I given myself a life cover? And that be a modest life cover. Some of us have children. Some of us, you're saying, you know what, they're still in school and I need to be able to plan for them. It's something you should consider. The number of insurance companies which offer many products, but you need to ensure that you have at least planned for the emergencies. And how you plan for the emergencies is starting off with saying that I accept that these emergencies may come and there are covers which I may have to have. Sometimes even death insurance. People have prepared in such a way that even for even at the end, they have made that has been provided for. In our economy, it hasn't yet penetrated quite a bit, but when you go to the Western world, a person will plan for their funeral for a long period of time. So this is what it needs to look like. So you need to ask yourself, have I prepared for that? Then for saving for emergency, one thing which I'll say is that you also need to have what we call an emergency fund. Let me just talk about that for a minute. Some people recommend 3 to 6 months of your salary as your emergency fund. I usually say at least start with one of your salaries. At least be able to say that I have an emergency fund of, which is equivalent to my salary. But 3 to 6 months of your pay is usually what is ideal. Then save for investments. Investments, I would like to make the case I made earlier that some of us may find that we have assets, but we have no cash. So it's important to consider cash or near cash investments. And one of the things which I recommend here is the use of things like treasury bills and bonds and unit trusts. And a number of insurance firms have products that can be helpful. So that if you say, I have retired, I used to earn 5 million per month. I have retired. When I go into retirement, I want to be able to earn 5 million shillings per month for the next 20 years. And you say, what will that mean? Then they will tell you that if you invested the money in a unit trust, for example, a unit trust can earn 10% or 11%. So if I can be able to mobilize an investment of 500 million and I get that at 10 or 12%, if it is at 12%, possibly I can be able to earn 5 million shillings per month for the next 20 years after I have invested my 500. And yet my investment of 500 is still held intact. So you need to do that. Some people will say, I'll get that from real estate. Well and good. But ask yourself, have I planned for where that paycheck is going to come from? And those of us who find that we are asset rich but cash poor, this might be a good time to say, I need to change my portfolio from having so many houses and chasing tenants who are not paying me. And possibly I'll sell one of the houses. I'm going to sell that house at 500. I will fix that money. I will invest in a treasury bill on a board and the number of products you can get from a number of firms. And I want that one to do one thing for me, to treat me like I am a salarized person. It pays me my salary of 5 million per month so that I can enjoy the city without being stressed. So you do that. Now you say, but the house, it can gain value in the next 10 years. But the truth is that you have no cash. And you may be forced to sell that house even at a heavily discounted price because of the absence of cash. Let me bring this to a close. Real estate, it's another good area. Money invest in real estate. I've talked about real estate here. But you need to understand that real estate is also active business. And some of us are struggling to even collect money from tenants. There are a number of companies which have come up, which do collection services. Sometimes you may have to consider it because some of us have real estate, but being able to get money from it. So you need to ask yourself, how do I make sure that I convert that real estate into something which generates cash? And sometimes you may need help. Business, if you choose to go into business, there are two reasons people go into business. Sometimes people go into business to pass time, to have something to do. And I see a lot of what you would call leisure farming. Someone has a farm where they like going. They're the ones who put money in and they don't get much out of it. They get a batch of matoke, a chicken now and then, but by and large, it's not making money. That's okay, because in retirement, you also need which takes your time. However, if you are in business to make money, you need to understand that it demands a heavy supervisory approach for you to be able to get money out of it. And sometimes that is the energy and the time we don't have when we're in retirement. So you need to ask yourself, is this something I want to do? So if it is, you want to open a cafe so that people can come and you hang around with people and enjoy, if what you are going to eat and your health and your accommodation is covered, then go ahead. But if you are going into it with money, then you have to appreciate that you are playing a game with people who may be much younger than you, people who may be much more energetic than you, and you need to ask yourself, Is that a game I'm willing and ready to pay? Now, for those of us who have been in business all our lives, and we are saying, should we retire from this business? You need to ask yourself, what is my succession plan? I encourage you, do listen to the video I talked about, but also encourage you to start a journey of saying, I need to release something. Most people have built a business from scratch. Releasing it is the most difficult thing. And you need to go through a difficult process of saying, how do I disentangle myself from decision making? When you give your son the business to run, he may fire an employee you have worked with 30 years. That's his first decision. And the truth is, he could be right. This fellow was very good 20 years ago, but now he's not adding any value. But you are going to say, but how do you fire someone who built this company? So the decisions, there's going to be tension between you, the old generation and the new generation. And you need to ask yourself, are we prepared to go through that journey? And lastly, manage your generosity. It's very good to be generous, but make sure it is managed. Put your generosity within the budget and say that this is what I can be able to afford. And don't put yourself in a position where you want to solve every problem. For those of us who are in retirement, we should have the humility to receive. Sometimes our children want to give to us, but we don't have the humility to receive. And you take that joy away, that opportunity to be able to give to you. So the two are important. Manage your generosity, say this is what I can do. But also sometimes if you are a person who is supposed to receive, make sure that you have that humility to receive. I'll stop there for now. Thank you so much for listening, and I will hand back to Dr.
Wow. Wow. I'm lost for words. Thank you so much, Ronald. This has been very, very educative. I'm sure to both the seniors and to the seniors to be. Thank you so, so much. Looking at the chat room, I think we are having a lot of good comments and no questions yet. But I would like to invite you to put up your hand if you want to make a comment or you want to make a quick question. Otherwise, this is thank you so much from almost everybody we have. Yes, 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 this has been great. I've been so overwhelmed by the fact that usually when you look at the words finance, you are looking at numbers, you feel it's numbers and numbers, but you've made it so real, so down to earth, so touching, that I'm sure everybody who's been on for the last 1 hour is greatly changed. I don't know. Yes, we have the contact of Ronald and we'll share it with you. And let me have Philippa, she has her hand up. Can Philippa come on, please?
Yes, thank you very much, moderator, and thank you so much, Ronald, for that presentation. I actually have no words, like the moderator said, I have no words, but thank you very much for everything that you have taught us. I wanted to ask about health insurance. You talked about life insurance, and earlier in your presentation, you talked about health and how finances and health go together. We need to be healthy as a way of also managing our finances. So I wonder if you can, or if you know about any good health insurance people out there, those companies, do they offer health insurance for people, especially over 60, 70 years of age? It is a problem. Many companies want to avoid that age group, but do you know of any that might be open to this age group that that people could benefit from?
Thank you, Philippa. I think that's a very, very good question. And there are a couple of products which are coming onto the market. I know that a couple of insurance firms have started preparing some products for the people who are over 60. I think Prudential Health is doing, I think Jubilee has some. I'm very sure about UAP. But what usually the products exist, their premiums are just a bit higher. In my opinion, it's actually a worthwhile investment, well knowing that usually the greatest risk after 60, after 65, it really boils down to health. And it's important to be able to kind of use a couple of those opportunities. I think there, Philip, I could share a couple of contacts of people who I know who work on some of those products. I'm sure that I've seen, I think, some quotations from Jubilee and UAP, but rather from Prudential. But I'll share those. I'll try to see if I can find them on my phone, and then I can forward them. Then we can share them around. And I imagine other insurance firms also are doing the same. Usually the premiums are just slightly higher, but they exist.
Thank you very much, Ronald. Maybe sorry. I wanted to just follow up on his last comment. The premiums being very high is also very prohibitive to many people. What other option would you give someone who's not able to afford those premiums? How can you go about getting healthcare covered without depleting family resources? What would be your advice?
Yeah, I think as I said, the premiums are pretty high, and I don't think that the product has also had sufficient uptake within the local market. So I imagine that the premiums might also be high because they are not attracting enough people to the product, which would reduce its price. But I think at a family level, one of the things which might be important to do as a family is to start a process of even just saving money together as a family. Not specifically for the health, but ensure that there is always a bit of resource that exists that you have brought together as a family. It can help. And possibly if you also save money together, then you can also access those products. I think usually in many family structures, the challenge when the weight is being borne by one or two people in the entire family for their parents. And sometimes there are families where the parents have many children and they could have 10 children, but only 2 children choose to come through. And the other 8, they let you move. So I think family meetings should start having conversations about these critical things. That, you know what, our parents are 70 years old. It means that we are living at it's a tough time. We could have a health challenge. Why don't we come together and put aside 50,000 shillings per month? Now, the 50,000 shillings per month, if it's 10 people, that can be 500. And after 6 months, you have 3 million shillings. You could use a unit trust to keep it, but it starts off that conversation of have a bit of money around. So for me, it's important that also we strengthen group saving and putting money together to be able to do that. But the conversations in families need to change. I didn't talk about this, but I think it seems like as families, we come together when there is crisis, but we don't plan together for crisis. So when there is a death in the family, you will find that that's when people come together. Now, there, I believe a couple of members on the call know that there are insurance products where you pay 3,000 shillings per month to cover death, and you can have a funeral package of close to 5 million shillings with a very small amount of money. But I think families need to converse together to make sure that is being done. So you need to kind of pull through. I've also seen, yes, Kabagambe has said Church of Uganda has insurance, which does not seem to be having high premiums for seniors. Great. I think that's very good, and that's something which you can check out. One thing we need to understand about the insurance industry is that the insurance industry is an industry of numbers, and every time there are organized groups which bring many people together, for example, the Church of Uganda, they can be able to collapse the premium for them. But when you are few, it becomes a big challenge. I believe that the prices of the premiums are going to go down as there is more uptake. Dr. Christina, back to you.
Esther Kusima wanted to share the presentation, and I just want to let everybody know that we do record the session and we get the YouTube product out a few weeks after this, like 2 weeks after this session. You'll be able to access the recording. So we may not get exactly Mr. Mukasa to share his presentation right now, but we'll get you the recording 2 weeks later.
All right. And Doctor, I'll also send the presentation to you.
Thank you very much,
okay,
Ronald. The link, the YouTube link has been posted. If you look at Purposeful Aging, you've got the link there, and you'll be able to access old sessions which have taken place. Do we have any hands up? Any other hands up? Most of this has been gratitude. If we don't have any hands up, we don't have any questions, could I ask Dr. Philippa to give us any notices and information we may need to carry away? And also, before that, Dr. Javila, could you give us some closing remarks, please?
Thank you so much, Dr. Christina, and thank you once again for the organizers. And a very big thank you to Ronald. I think this was probably, personally, this has been the best talk I've had this year. Very informative and very helpful and very practical. And I believe this will help each and every one of us, those of us who are still being employed as we age gracefully into retirement. I want to thank you once again, Ronald. I hope and pray that in the near future, you could actually come back and share a lot more about financial literacy. I think this should be an ongoing educational program for all of us. And I think even our children now, the Bazukulu, for the judges on this forum. Thank you once again. And we look forward to hearing from you again in the near future. Back to you, Dr. Christina, the organizers.
Dr. Philippa?
Right. I'll just give a few remarks after that. Thank you again, Ronald. And it's interesting how Dr. Javier mentioned children. We are all about purposeful aging and aging intentionally. And it's good to know that we want to have a nice succession plan so that our children are well prepared, even as we are in the older ages. So it's a good idea. Thank you once again. So just a few notices from Purposeful Aging. Once again, we have our sessions every last Saturday of the month at 10 a.m. We know some people have had difficulty being a Saturday with other commitments, and we are open to suggestions on changes in time. If you find that it's not working for you, you can let us know via our email, which is purposefulaging@gmail.com. I'd also like to reiterate the fact that our recordings for all the sessions are on our YouTube channel. It was posted in the chat earlier. We can repost it again shortly. And please feel free to look at these for all the other sessions you've had in the past, including this one. And if you can send us your email, if we don't already have it, we'll be able to send you a link to the recording once it is uploaded, as well as a presentation for this session. Our next session is scheduled for the last week of October, the last Saturday of October, which will be the 29th of October. We hope to have this as a session that will cover diabetes. It is an issue that is very common in our population. So we'll have someone come in to Dr. Mukasa will be with us talking about diabetes. And we hope to see you all there for that session. Sorry, Dr. Mtevi, not Dr. Mukasa. Thank you. Yes, thank you very much for attending. Back to you, moderator.
Thank you, Dr. Philippa. I must say that the attitude of gratefulness, as Ronald put it, is a very, very, very crucial, very important attitude to have. And purposeful aging actually is using exactly that. We are very grateful to you, Ronald. It's amazing that we've had such rich information, rich sharing at no cost. So Ronald, please accept our gratitude to you for having opened many eyes this morning, and many more will be open when they look at the YouTube channel. We are very, very grateful. I think this has been very stimulating, and we look forward to having more sessions with you. And on this note, I want to thank you all 41 participants who have been with us this morning, soon becoming an afternoon. We are very grateful that you've been with us, and you are constantly giving us tips of how to continue with purposeful aging. Thank you so much for coming. Have a blessed weekend, and